David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. One of the things I like to do in my reviews is to provide as many little interesting tidbits of information about a pen as possible. And today I have a pen where there is a lot of little details to cover. It's one of the latest releases from Montblanc in their Great Characters series, and that would be the Enzo Ferrari. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this uniquely themed pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at Applebaum for providing this pen on loan for review. In my opinion, Montblanc has done an excellent job with their themed pens. While all of the themes don't necessarily hit all of the buttons for me personally in regard to the person it's related to, I think that they are in general very well executed. If you are a fan of the person being paid tribute to in one of these pens, then the chances are you would also love this pen. So, let's get a look at the topic of this specific pen, and that is the Italian race car driver and automaker Enzo Ferrari. The pen arrives in this box right there with a nice picture of Enzo on the front. Inside we have a couple of things. Get this out. First, there's the documentation. Another thing Montblanc does really well is the custom documentation included with each pen in their Great Characters series. It goes into great detail explaining the symbolism contained within the elements of this pen and some of the unique manufacturing processes used to create the design. Enzo was born in 1898, and his full name is Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Maria Ferrari. He grew up with a love of motorsports, and when he was in his early 20s, became an accomplished driver, winning many races. Here he is early in his racing career, actually driving for Alfa Romeo, which is where he got his start. Motorsports were even more dangerous back then than they are today, and Enzo was deeply affected by the loss of a couple of his friends in racing accidents. So following the birth of his son in 1932, he retired from racing and focused more on the development of Alfa Romeo racing cars and managing their racing team. I'm simplifying the story greatly, but eventually he left Alfa Romeo to begin producing cars under the Ferrari name. And for the most part, Enzo seldom traveled outside of Italy. He never visited the US because he was afraid to fly. He passed away in 1988 at the age of 90. And something interesting his family had said is that after he was trapped in an elevator in the 1920s, he never rode one again, avoiding elevators for over 60 years. That might have been tough to do, but apparently he did it. Then we have this display box, the same picture, but more of a sepia tone. And then we have the pen. Get this out here. This is the Montblanc Enzo Ferrari. As with most Montblanc themed pens, there is a lot going on here. It is made from resin. The shape of the pen has been inspired by the streamlined silhouette of the Ferrari 125S model with its gently contoured and sleek looks and undulating and organic lines. The color is inspired by Ferrari's 70th anniversary red, which is an homage to one of the more prominent colors that they are associated with, which is their racing red. This 70th anniversary red is very similar to the racing red, but kind of pops a little bit less in the light. There are lines on both the barrel and the cap depicting the panels on the car's exterior. There's also some air intakes. Let's take a look at the top of the cap. There's a lot going on here. First of all, the Montblanc emblem is embedded in a metal grid inspired by a vintage car grille. The underlying yellow resin is synonymous with Modena, Italy, Enzo's birthplace. Encircling the emblem is the name of Enzo's father's workshop, Officina Meccanica Alfredo Ferrari. Below that, we have a couple of things. One side is engraved with Enzo's signature. This is also where the serial number of the pen is located. And then it also has the Ferrari Prancing Stallion logo. This logo was something that Enzo borrowed from a gentleman by the name of Count Francesco Baracca, who was a renowned Italian Air Force pilot during World War I. His plane had that same design printed on the side. Baraka was a national hero who is said to have won nearly 36 dogfight victories before being shot down in 1918. A few years later, in 1923, Baraka's parents asked Ferrari to use their son's design on his car for good luck. On the official logo, the yellow background again symbolizes the color of the Italian city of Modena, where Enzo was born, and then the green, white, and red stripes at the top represent the Italian flag. And the letters S and F below the horse stand for Scuderia Ferrari. Scuderia is the Italian word for horse stable, and Scuderia Ferrari was the name the company gave to their racing team. Next, we have the clip. It's a very nice size with a slight bend to it. The top of the base is reminiscent of an air intake on a car. And then we have the clip itself. It's engraved with a quote from Enzo. You cannot describe passion, you can only live it. The clip is a little bit on the stiff side, but it still can be used in materials of varying sizes. The cap angles up slightly. And then at the end, there is a silver metal band and a rounded step down to the barrel. The barrel angles down at an even rate of decline until you reach the piston knob. At the beginning of this piston knob, it is engraved with two dates. February 18th, 1898, which was the day Enzo was born, and June 17th, 1923, which is the date he won his first major race. The cap twists off with 1.5 rotations, and underneath we have this custom 14-karat gold nib. Through Applebaum, this nib is available in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, double broad, oblique medium, oblique broad, and oblique double broad. On the nib, it is engraved with the traditional Montblanc 4810, which is the height in meters of the actual Montblanc. There is then the steering wheel from a Ferrari 250 GTO and the word pilota, which is Italian for pilot and was one of Enzo's nicknames. That's another thing that Montblanc really does well with the Great Characters line is coming up with new and unique nib stampings that really associate with the theme of the pen. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section begins with a very slightly flared edge. The section almost appears to be straight, but it does rise just under 1 millimeter before it reaches the metal cap threads and a medium-sized step up to the remainder of the barrel. Even though there is a fair amount of metal on the back end of this pen, I do find it to be well balanced in the hand. It does have a bit of weight to it, but I would categorize it as a good weight that makes the pen feel really solid and well built. The cap is not designed to post, which is fine. The cap is fairly hefty, and posting it would really throw off the balance of this pen in your hand. Since I just mentioned the piston knob, you might have correctly deduced that this is a piston filler. The metal on the piston knob is a little bit slick, so if you should be cleaning the pen or your hands are wet, then it can be a little bit tough to get a grip on it, but the mechanism is smooth and operates well. The Montblanc Enzo Ferrari is available through Applebaum for around $950, depending on the euro to dollar exchange rate. That price is in line with the other pens in the Montblanc Great Characters series, so while this is not an inexpensive offering, I don't feel the price is out of line. I'll put a link to where you can find it on the Applebaum site in the notes below. If you are a fan of Ferrari or you happen to own one of their cars, I can imagine that this pen would be very attractive to you. Overall, I feel it has really sleek looks and really does a great job of paying tribute to the man behind the brand. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Montblanc Enzo Ferrari. Just wanted to give you another closer look at some of the details there. I really like the emblem here at the end. I just think that looks really sharp. And there's just a lot of really neat notes on this pen. And like I mentioned before, I just think the nib stamping on there is incredible. And in regard to a couple of other Montblanc pens, this is what it looks like with a 149. And then here it is with a 146. And then here it is with a Star Walker. In regard to a couple of other pens, here it is with a Sailor King of Pen that's in Royal Tangerine. Here it is with a Montblanc Alfred Hitchcock, which is one of my favorite pens in my collection. And then finally, I have one in their Great Writers series, in Montblanc's Writers series, that I haven't reviewed yet, but you'll see in the somewhat near future, and that would be the Brothers Grimm. It's an interesting look to it, and I really haven't even really studied this pen that much and gotten a chance to kind of go into what all the symbolism is. But I look forward to showing you that in the fairly near future. In regard to uncapped comparisons, here it is with the 149 and the 146, and then the Sailor King of Pen. Here we go with the writing sample for the Montblanc Enzo Ferrari. And this is a medium 14 karat gold nib. In regard to an ink, Montblanc always comes out with a pairing ink that matches with the pen, and that I would have thought that it might have been a red ink, but no, it's actually a purple ink. But there's a specific reason for that. That's because whenever Enzo would sign his name, he always used a purple ink, so it was a bit appropriate. Maybe they thought coming out with a red would be a little bit too matchy-matchy, but I actually used a red ink in this particular pen, and the ink that I chose was Le Bon Aries. This is what Aries looks like. It's a nice vibrant red with some shading to it. This is what it looks like with Three Oysters Chili Red. And then here we have Diamine Poppy Red. This is what the Le Bon 50 milliliter bottles look like. Nice large bottles, and everything in their Greek series has been nice that I've tested. I think I've reviewed one of them previously on my channel. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. The Montblanc nibs are outstanding. That I typically have no complaints about their nibs. They're very well tuned. They do have a little bit of flex to them. For a medium nib, it's a decent amount of ink flow. In regard to reverse writing, might be able to hear that. That is rather scratchy. But in regard to some fast writing, the feed has no problem in keeping up. So there we have the Montblanc Enzo Ferrari. Like I mentioned a couple of times, I think Montblanc does an awesome job with their great characters and their themed pens. I just think that they do a really good job of putting a lot of thought and effort into the design. And I've cared for just about every single one that I have reviewed. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.